All day long, NBC News has been keeping track of who's supporting and who's opposing the debt ceiling bill. So at this point, 3 dozen lawmakers, most of them Republicans, have come out against it. But, of course, that count is literally changing by the hour. My next guest has been one of the most vocal denouncers of the bill, Florida Republican Congressman Byron Donalds. It's good to talk to you, Congressman. Give us the short version, if you will. Why are you so opposed to this bill?
Well, let's be very clear. This bill calls for at least a $4 trillion raise in our national debt. There are no real cuts in this bill, about $12 billion of year one cuts. The estimates of about $2 trillion or $1.3 trillion in deficit reduction are based upon spending targets that are not really codified in law. And I can go on from there. You have an administrative pay-go, which can be waived by the OMB director whenever she chooses to. That's the way the language is written. And we're not making any structural changes to the way Washington spends its money. And for those reasons, I'm a no.
Okay, so let's take the one part of it which is what this costs. And we all know that the national debt under President Trump rose more than $7.8 trillion. McCarthy said this bends that cost curve down. Let me play for you exactly what he said.
I've talked to many about whether they're for or against the bill. I'm not sure what in the bill people are concerned about. It is the largest savings of $2.1 trillion we've ever had. And if I compare it to when Republicans were in the majority, when they had the House, the Senate, and the presidency, they didn't cut anything. They just added more money.
I'm not going to ask you to defend the past and Donald Trump. You weren't even in office, but it sounds like you don't concede McCarthy's point that he's moving things in the right direction. Is he wrong when he says it is the largest savings of $2.1 trillion we've ever had?
Well, look, before I even got to Congress, I would see these CBO estimates about savings over a 10-year window. Here's the truth for the American people. Though they never materialize, the only thing that really matters are what you do in the first year of any of these spending negotiations. What's in this bill is about $12 billion in cuts. And so if you're asking me to cut $12 billion in order to raise $4 trillion, that answer is no. On a broader point, I think if you're going to talk about the spending under President Trump, let's be clear. A big chunk of that was the CARES Act in response to COVID-19. It was a unique experience, an emergency action. And so my position and a lot of House Republicans' position has been is that now that the COVID pandemic is over, the federal agencies should be able to go back to pre-COVID spending levels. This bill actually keeps 2022 spending levels, which is not before the pandemic.
So let's take a bottom line. Are you okay with the U.S. defaulting if it means you've got more leverage potentially in renegotiating?
No, I'm not okay with default. And let's be very, very clear. I understand that a couple things are going to happen in that event. Yields in the bond market will rise dramatically. It will shrink credit in our country. And Washington will be forced, frankly, to do something different and to finally get it in line. But the American people must also understand that our true default is having too much debt on the nation's credit card with no fundamental way of repaying it and not even being able to pay for the things that Republicans and Democrats or Americans all want Washington to actually do. Under the president's budget, interest on the debt becomes the #1 line item on the nation's fiscal health. That's not sustainable. So whether you're talking about 32 trillion or 36 trillion or 40 trillion, the trajectory we are on is not going to work for the American people.
Congressman, I'm out of time, but let me ask you really quickly. In the end, how many no's do you think the Republicans will tally?
Look, right now, I don't know. We'll see how it ends up on the floor. I'm thinking the number's around 50. Could be more than that, but we'll see what happens.
Congressman Byron Donalds, thank you.